All right, I'll share my screen. I'm going to do this demo and talk about this using my iPad. The features are available with a different user interface on the Mac and also on the phone. So you can do, as far as I'm aware, you can do everything that I'm going to walk through today on those other devices, but the interface, just because of the size of the device, is a little bit different. So you can keep that in mind. And we could explore those others if you have specific other devices, if you have other questions. Aaron gave a really good presentation when he talked about all the new features, and he touched on this issue of the Photos app. But he had so much information to share that I'm sure that, for a lot of us, that might have been a little, overwhelming, and with just a brief exposure to all the new things that Apple brought along. So this is an opportunity to spend a few more minutes looking at the new Photos app. Um, I found that when I looked at it, my first reaction was, "Oh, wow, this is different." And my second reaction was, "Okay, this will be fun. This is something new to learn, and I'll dig into this and figure out what Apple's trying to do." Because I tend to like, unlike a lot of people, I tend to like it when interfaces change and I have something new to learn and have to figure out how to do something I've known how to do. So it doesn't frustrate me so much as it just gives me an opportunity to learn something new. So I wasn't really bothered by the changes, but from what I've heard and read, a lot of people were just thrown and just really didn't like the new Photos look. It's just like, you've changed something and I don't like it. And that's fair, because if you're used to what you're used to, then it would be a little bit different. Then there was that Groups IO exchange that Aaron offered some really great information on, that was referred to just a few moments ago, about how to clean things up if you didn't want to have everything that Apple was offering. So that's what this is about, is to try to show the new Photos app from an iPad perspective, show some of the things that can be done. And all of this, I think all of this except the cleanup version is available uh, regardless of device. So we'll dig in here and take a look at the iPad. So let me share my iPad, a cable. Okay. Can you see a Photos app on your screen?
Yes.
Okay. So here I am on my iPad and I've opened up Photos. Now, don't worry if yours looks a little bit different, because of the customizable aspect of this. Yours might look different than mine, and we'll show you how to deal with that. But here you come into Photos, and I think this looks quite a bit different. And people were thrown by this. Hey, wait a minute, where's my library? Where are all my photos? Now what do I do? Because there's all this information that's down below here, that's all this new stuff that wasn't there before is now there. So a couple of things to point out here, and then we can get in and show you how to manage this and wrestle it to the ground and make it about as simple as you want, if you want to do that. So the first thing I'd point out is the obvious thing to you. In the upper left corner, right above the word Photos, you see the little sidebar icon. So if I tap that sidebar icon, I can actually remove the sidebar, give myself more screen space, and I can look at the photos, you know, I want without that sidebar distraction. For the purpose of this demo, I'm going to bring the sidebar back. So I'm going to tap the sidebar icon to the left of the word Photos, and I'll bring the sidebar back in. To me, if you're going to work with this new interface or even play with it to see if you might like it, the one thing that's useful to know on the iPad, well, on any device, I guess, but not so much the Mac, the phone and the iPad, I think, is that you might be wondering what, well, that top section where it says Photos, and the one, two, three, the top four lines, those are really the most recent photos in the photo, in the quote unquote camera roll. So all of your photos, 13,068 of them in this case, all of the photos are there. And so if I just pull down, well, watch what happens. I'm going to pull down on that top section, anywhere there. I'm going to press and hold and pull down just a little bit. I didn't do it the right way there. There it is. Pull down just a little bit. And you notice what appeared at the bottom of the screen. So I just pulled that top section down, and now I have years, months, all. So all is highlighted. That means that all 13,068 items are available, are being shown up there. And there they are. I'm not going to scroll through them all, but they're all there. If I want to see this presentation of the photos by months, I tap the months item, and now I see photos by month. If I want to see years, I tap the years icon, and now I choose what year I want, and I can go find my photos that way. So I'm going to go back and tap all. So I'm back where we were. This now shows, so what I have here is my photos library. And this part that's visible on the screen right now is what pretty much what we were used to. So it's all your photos, they're just there in most recent ones at the bottom in this case. So that's something we're sort of familiar with. While you have that menu at the bottom displayed, and again, if I scroll back up on my iPad, that menu goes away. All right, I want to be able to make sure you can see that. I'm pulling down, and at some point I get the arrows, years, months, all, and the X. If I have my finger, I just scroll back up, and that menu goes away. So I pull down, and it displays, push up, and it goes away. And then I had these other new things that have been added down below. Before we get to those, I'm going to pull down again on the top item until the menu appears with the up and down arrows, years, months, and all. Let's take a quick look at what the arrows mean. If I tap at the bottom of the screen, if I tap the up and down arrow, I get a menu. I can change the sort order from date captured to recently added. I can change whether I'm showing my personal library, a shared library, or both libraries. In my case, it's both. It's very easy to switch and only show, if I tap shared, it only shows the items in the shared library. If I tap personal, it only shows the pictures that are in the personal library. If I tap both, it shows both. The other thing that's available there from this arrow menu, the up and down arrow menu, is I can filter. So if I tap the word filter, I now have choices. I'm now showing all items. You can see that that's checked. I could change it to only show me screenshots, or only show me videos, or videos and screenshots, or items or I can turn off, I can go to all items, and then I can show items I've edited. So these are only items that I've made some edits for. So I can mix and match this. I could show favorites that I've edited, in this case, none apparently. So I have different filter options there that are just one tap away to narrow in on things if I want to narrow in. So that's a quick look at that filtering option. If I tap the word filter, I can clear that out. If I can look at view options at the bottom, I have some view options. Now what I can do with a tap is I can go zoom in, and I can zoom in, and that just makes it doesn't change the information that's displayed, but it makes each of the thumbnails larger and larger if I want to see them more clearly, or in a larger format. If I tap zoom out, this goes back to the way I had it. I can change to aspect ratio grid, which is the way the pictures were originally taken, or I can go back to a square presentation, whatever I'm comfortable with. and I can indicate whether or not I want to show screenshots at all in my library, or whether I want to show items that have been shared with me, and whether I want to show the shared library badge. That shared library badge, which is those silhouettes of two people, if you look, if you look up at some of the pictures up above behind these menus, you'll see that some of those pictures have that little two-person icon in the upper right-hand corner. That's the shared library badge. So this allows you to tell just at a glance which items are in your shared library and which items are not. So if I uncheck this, the pictures stay the same. There's no change in what's presented, but that badge goes away. I tend to like it, have it on, so I tend to leave the shared library badge turned on, so it displays that little icon in the right corner in this particular view. So those are the view options.
Are you taking questions at this time?
Uh, yeah, and I'll tell you if I'm going to cover something coming up, but sure, absolutely.
I don't understand the concept shared library. My question is this something I shared with someone else, or is this something that someone else shared their library with me? Is it A or B?
Yes.
Oh, geez. Please
Actually, it could be,
explain.
well, no, it could be both. Um, okay, let me back up. And there are people here that know more about this than I do. So if I get myself in trouble, please help. In the old days, there was something that was called a shared album, where you could share an album in your photos with other people. That concept still exists. Shared albums is still a thing. It still exists, and I actually have a couple. About 2 years ago, I forget, somewhat more recently, Apple introduced a thing called a shared library. And this is a concept where you can set up a shared library with other people. I have a shared library that I set up with my wife. And what that means is that she and I both have access to this shared library. So we can choose a person, and I can share uh, my photos. No, I'll be clear. I can take some of my photos and I can move them to the shared library. When I do that, my wife has access to them because she has access to our shared library. And she can do the same thing. She can move photos to our shared library. So it's a place where we can both see the same photos. Have you ever had the time in the past where your photos were over here and your spouse's photos were somewhere else, and they really weren't, they weren't together? Yours were yours, hers were hers, or his were his, and that was it. Now you can move selected photos, whichever ones you want, into this thing called a shared library, and you both have access. You both, or more people. It doesn't have to be just two people. More people can have access to the photos that are in the shared library. When you're when you're sh- when you're sharing them, they're no longer in your personal library. You've actually moved them to a shared library. They're no longer in your personal library, and the person or people you're sharing with have access to that, and they can do whatever they want with those, including delete the photos. So be alert to that. Okay, I went on too long. I'm sorry. Did that help at all, Tim?
A great deal. Now I know what I'm looking for when I read the user's guide, uh, because it is a subtle difference between a shared album, where I just make a particular album available on the internet
Yep.
for someone who I have granted permission to view that album.
Yes.
but it's
Yeah.
still
It's
my
yeah.
album in my library.
It's still your album in your library, and that's a shared album and that still exists. That's still a thing. Shared library is relatively new, and it really is a situation where, I mean, it's a perfect example for, I think, a family or people that just want to share things, and they can very easily. It's easy to set up a shared library. I wasn't going to talk about that today, but it's easy to set up the shared library and specify who's in it. The one thing, again, as I said, to emphasize, when you're uh, putting photos in the shared library, you're moving them to the shared library. I mean, you still have access to them. You could still pull them back. It's not like they're gone in some unretrievable place or anything. You can still do anything you would want with them. You can still edit them. You can still, see them, view them, make slideshows, and do all that kind of stuff. But a single photo, unless you duplicate it, but a single photo, unless you've made a copy or a duplicate, is either in your personal library or your shared library. It's not in both places at the same time. That's why this um, That's why this view option, or no, I'm sorry, no, that's why this menu that's on the screen has the choices of what do you want to see? Do you want to see both libraries? Do you want to see your personal or you want to see your shared? And you get to choose what you want to see and you can flip back and forth. So if I know that I'm looking for something that's in a shared library and I want to browse and look around, I can just tap on the screen as I will here, shared library. Now, everything that's presented here is in a shared library. None of my personal library photos are shown here. So if I tap the icon, and you notice at the bottom of the screen to the left of the word years, those up and down arrows, they changed to that two-person icon. That's your visual indication that you're looking at the shared library only. If I tap that icon, oops, I have to pull down. If I tap that icon, I can go back and tap the words both libraries. Now I'm seeing everything.
Hey Van, real quick, how did you get that library or that menu on your screen?
Okay, so if I go back to the very beginning, go back to photos here to the top, well, okay, I mean, there we go. If I start with something that looks maybe like this, I put my finger anywhere in that photos area at the top, anywhere in those first four lines, and I just press and pull down. I'm just dragging it down. You see what I'm doing? I
Yeah.
just get to the bottom of the screen and the menu appears. And if I scroll back up, there'll be a point where it'll go away. So just press and drag down, and the menu appears.
I was talking about that
Okay.
menu that was in the middle of your pictures.
Ah, okay, that came up because I tapped the two arrows to the left of the word years at the bottom of the screen.
Aha.
Up and down arrow. I'm going to tap that, and that brings up the main, the main menu there, where I have some options, including switching from libraries, but it's also where I can bring up the filters, and I can also bring up the view options.
Got it. Thank you very
So
much.
it's those two, yeah, there's two up and down arrows is the key there.
Good. Thank you. I have another question about albums, but I'll wait.
Okay. Yeah, okay. Well, I wasn't going to get into that too much, but yeah, that's fine. I'm sure other people, well, we could talk about that later.
My question was just, can you order the albums, the list? Like, I have an album that might be six six items down, but I want to put it at
Well,
the top.
I don't know. We can look at that.
All right, thanks.
Okay. Any other questions before I move on? Let's
Yeah.
see. Check. Yes.
What about screenshots? That seems to have changed recently. I took a screenshot and then I couldn't find it.
Well, that's a whole different subject we could talk about. But assuming that assuming that you saved your screenshot to your photos,
I don't
and
know
that's
why
an
I saved
option.
it. That's why I couldn't find it.
When you create a screenshot, there are various options that you have available. And one of those is that you can save the screenshot to your photos. If you do that, then you can use one of these things I was just talking about. If I tap at the bottom, if I've saved a screenshot to photos, I can tap the up and down arrows, and I can tap filter, and I can say only show me screenshots. Now, the only thing that's being presented here is 124 screenshots. And so I just went from 13,000 plus photos to 124 screenshots by tapping that screenshot item. Now, if I want to find a screenshot, the chances are I can find it.
That says bunch
So-
of, on my screen, it comes out, I guess, to a whole bunch of, I can't quite see them. I've got a MacBook here. No, it's changed. It went away. Okay, well, so do you have to say, show me screenshots?
Well, you have to,
Verbally?
again, Jim, I'm showing you this on an iPad.
Uh-huh.
It would take 3 times as long to do this on a phone and also on a Mac. You can get to these same things on a Mac. The user interface is a little different. So there'd be a way, probably under the view menu or something on your in your Photos app on your Mac, that would allow you to show screenshots. We could explore that if we have time later, but
Okay, thanks.
there's a way to do this stuff on the other devices. The user interface is just a little bit different. Okay. I'm going to close. Okay. The final button at the top, or I'm sorry, at the bottom of the screen is the X. That's just going to close that menu. If I tap the X, it closes that menu and takes me back to the screen, to the section that I have, that I had originally. Now, if I scroll, okay, so again, the top part here is your photos library, and it just goes on and on and on, through all your photos up there. So that's the stuff we were mostly used to in the past. That's where all of our photos were, in this case, with the most recent ones at the bottom. Down below is where this new stuff is, and we can show you how to manage that. So let's look down below here. I'm going to scroll down, and there's an area called Recent Days, where Apple has pulled together photos that I've taken over the last couple of weeks or so, and they're there. So that could be convenient, or it could be distracting, depending on your point of view. If I scroll on down, there's an area called Albums, and you see 3 albums listed there. 2010, 2011, 2012. It shows you some albums. Then there's information on trips, and I can tap that and go into various trips. But I can scroll down, and there's pictures of people that it's pulled together. Apple has also pulled up things that it calls pinned, and we could talk briefly about that. Then you have your utilities. We'll walk through these. Then you have a thing called Memories that Photos app has created, or that you've created. And then there's a thing called Feature Photos, where the Photos app has gone through and said, hey, here's some real photos that are sort of interesting. I think you'd like these photos. And you can look at some of these featured photos that Apple has identified. Then there's shared albums. These are albums that you've created. This is back to Tim's question. These are the old type of albums that you've created where you've shared with somebody else. Not only is it an album, but it's a shared album. Then you have a section for media types. Okay, let me just show you a couple of things here, and then we'll show you how to customize this if you find this totally unacceptable and totally distracting. On each of these sections that's down here, you'll notice that the heading, the name, like albums and trips and people, and recent days, each of those headings has a right-facing disclosure arrow after its name. So if I tap that arrow, it opens up all the days, and I go by day. I'm going to hit back. If I tap albums, then it doesn't just show me 3 albums, it shows me all of my albums. And I can choose personal, shared, and so forth. I'm going to go back. If I tap trips, it doesn't just show me a couple of trips, it shows me any number of trips, and it organizes them by date at the top. And I can choose, trips in 2018 or trips in 2016, that kind of thing. Now I can go back. So again, the point is that each of these sections will have that disclosure triangle pointing to the right. And if you tap it, you're opening up that item to see essentially everything that's in it. So that's one thing to know. Okay. The other thing, and this is where people got confused. They just saw this and it's like, this is too much. I'm overwhelmed. I don't know how to deal with it. I want to get rid of it. So this is what was mentioned earlier, and this is the key that Aaron had mentioned in the Groups IO exchange. If you go all the way to the bottom, then there's a button that says Customize and Reorder. See that one? I'm going to tap Customize and Reorder. This brings up essentially all of the sections we've just been viewing. And each one of those that has a check mark on it, if you look at the left of the of each heading, there's a circle, and there's either a check mark or there's an empty circle without a check mark. Everything that has a check mark is appearing on that front screen. So I've had people express the view that they don't want all this crap. They're not helped by it. They want to clean things up and they don't want to see all that stuff. Fair enough. All you have to do is do what Aaron had mentioned in the Groups IO setting. I'm going to uncheck these. So I'm going to start with recent days. I'm going to uncheck the check mark, uncheck these check marks. I'm just unchecking them all. They're all unchecked. Now I'm going to hit the X at the top right of this window. I'm going to go back. And now the only thing that appears on this main screen is my photos library and the Customize and Reorder icon. You see that? So I got rid of all of those sections that were being shown down below. So if you don't like those and you want to go back to something and says, I like it the way it used to be, you can pretty much get back there by getting rid of all those extra sections if they don't speak to you. Or you can bring the ones back and only have the ones that you might find useful, knowing that you can get rid of them and add them back at any time that you might want to. I'm going to editorialize here for a minute. I think what Apple's trying to do, and I realize that for some people this was confusing, and that's understandable. I think what Apple was trying to do is they're trying to help people not just take pictures and file them away, but actually be able to view them, look at them, enjoy them. And that's why they do some of these things like, well, here's some favorites, here's some featured, here's some this, here's some that. And I will say that since this has been available, I've taken a look every so often at that featured photos or other kinds of things. And that's been a memory. That's been, oh, okay, I forgot about that photo. And so it's a way to surface out of your 13,000 or your 29,000 or your 100,000 photos. It's a way to surface some things maybe you haven't seen for 2 or 3 years. And it might be a pleasant memory to sort of, revisit a trip or look at some photos of people, that kind of thing. I think that's what they're trying to do. Now there is a viewpoint that says, Apple, I don't need you to do that. I'll do that myself. Fair enough. In that case, feel free to get rid of all of that, all of those sections, and you can just make them go away. I'm going to go back and I'm going to customize them because I tend to like them there. I tend to like all of them there, except wallpaper. I'm going to put my check marks back. You see what I'm doing here? I'm putting the check marks back to all of the items. So now they'll all be displayed on that front screen. But let's say that I want to change the order in which they're displayed. So right now I have recent days is shown there at the top. And what that means is that recent days is going to be the first section right underneath my photos library, as it were. So let's say that I want media types isn't that important to me. So I'm going to, each of these sections has the 3 horizontal lines that indicate you can drag the item around. So I'm going to find media types. I'm going to press the 3 horizontal lines. I'm going to pick it up and I'm going to drag it down. I'm going to place it underneath utilities. So I can move my trips, hold that. I can move that over. I can bring that up there. I can move my featured photos up a little bit. And I can rearrange this the way I want. Okay, albums is more important to me. Getting to my albums is a little more important to me than even shared albums. So I'm going to move albums up there. Anyway, so you can place these items however you want them. And the order in which you place them here is the order in which those sections are going to appear on the main screen below your library area or your all photos area. So now I've rearranged this, and if I tap the X, there we go. Now these items underneath this photos area here are in the main photos area. They're in the order in which I have just established them using the customize and reorder. So I've created the order in which these appear, and I can create whether or not those sections even appear at all. Can you pause there for a second and see if that makes sense? Any questions at this point? I can't tell what's happening. I thought I heard something. Somebody must have raised their hand. Is that Joe?
It was.
Okay.
3 quick questions. Somehow I missed what the utilities do. Curious about how interactive
I'm going to go.
Sorry?
I'm going to go through them.
Okay. How interactive is this app with the? How similar is it on the phone and your Mac? I mean, if you're reordering things, is that going to sort of show up the same way? And then, just out of curiosity, is the featured the same sort of set of selections that throws photos up at the top of your what do they call it, the home page on your phone?
I don't know the answer to the third question, and I think the organization of this is preserved by device. So I think I can set this up on my iPad, and then I can have a different setup on my phone.
Okay.
That would be, I believe that's the case.
Final quick question. Do I understand?
And I'll get to the utilities in a minute.
Do I understand correctly that I can deselect the screenshots, which I'm profligate with, but go find them pretty easily, switch back and forth?
Yeah. Okay. For example, I'm going to pull down.
Yeah, I saw how you did it. It's just if I do that, I just don't see them, but I can just with a couple of clicks go look at all the screenshots, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Like here, I would do view options and I would turn off screenshots under view options. But then if I want to see them, I can go back in and I can have a filter that only shows me screenshots.
Right. Got it. Thank you.
So I think those 2 things would work in concert in order to accomplish what you wanted to do. Okay. You mentioned utilities. I was going to get into that. So, all right, let me show. Okay, on the left sidebar here, let me just show a couple of things. If I scroll down, oops, I'm going to close that. If I scroll down, I have days here, and it shows me some days. If you look in the left sidebar, there is an item under photos that says days on the left sidebar. If I tap that days, it brings me my days view. If I go back to photos, I'm back to the photos view. If I tap the disclosure triangle after the word recent days in the center of the screen, that takes me to the same place tapping days in the left sidebar took me. They both go to the same place. Okay. Same thing for people, memories, and trips. So even if you don't, let's say you don't like recent days, trips, or memories down below here because you find that confusing or something, if you got rid of those items, they're still available to you in the sidebar and you can still find them. So, and if you've hidden the sidebar, you can just bring it back and you can tap and find those items. Okay.
I got a question.
Mm-hmm.
Can
Yes.
can you project these photos onto the screen?
Well, somebody else can talk about that. You can airplay items from your devices to an AirPlay device. I would, if in my particular case, that would be an Apple TV. So that's that's one option. The other option is, well, yeah, another option is that these actually you can choose what certain things can sync to your Apple TV, and you might not even have to AirPlay them because your photos can already be on your Apple TV and they're already accessible there if you've synced it to an Apple TV. But I'm not sure what setup you might have, but AirPlay is an option.
I wonder, can you do anything with slides? If you got my wife and I up in the attic, we got like 10 boxes of slides from former places we lived and stuff like and family. Can you do anything with slides in this system?
You can either on your own or you can pay somebody to convert the slides to images, and they'll create images, essentially JPEG images. As it's no longer a slide, but it's it's a digital image rather than the physical slide.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, it's possible to convert slides just as you would convert old physical photographs by scanning them or something like that. So yeah, you can do that.
Mm-hmm. Thanks.
Okay, let's take a look at the left sidebar now. We have photos, days, people, memories, trips, featured photos. Those are somewhat self-explanatory. By featured, it's what the Photos app thinks you might be interested in. So you may or may not agree, but I found some interesting things in there. I thought, oh man, I forgot about that. Look at that. That was the day I retired, kind of thing. So, again, I'm not hooked on it, but I see what Apple's trying to do here in the Photos app is they're trying to dig into my 13,000 items and maybe help me revisit some of them. So I actually find that stuff to be useful now that I know how to control it. It's not distracting anymore. It's just available as a tool. Wallpaper suggestions, I have no interest in that particularly. They'll just find pictures that they think would be useful for you to use as wallpaper. I'm not something I'm particularly interested in. If you keep going down on the left sidebar, the next area is pinned collections. And the next 5 items all have these disclosure triangles out, which showing that you can expand the item. So if I tap the disclosure triangle to the right of the words pinned collection, that area opens up. And so the areas that are pinned in Apple's terminology are anything that I've considered favorites, anything that I've recently saved. My map information is considered to be pinned, and my panoramas are considered to be pinned. I don't know that I can control that. I mean, I don't know that I can control those sections, but that's just, that's just what they are, as near as I know. So that's what's in the pin collections area. I'm going to tap to collapse that. Then I'm going to show you the utilities area. Now, actually, let's do media types next. I'm going to tap the triangle next to media types, and it's going to expand. So now I can choose what I want displayed. Show me videos, only show me selfies, only show me live photos, only show me portraits that have been taken with that feature, only show me the panoramas, only show me the slow-mos, only show me the burst images, and only show me screenshots. So there's another way, Joe, to get to those if you wanted to. It's considered under media types. So I'm going to collapse that. I'm going to tap photos at the top just to go back to what we're familiar with. Then I'm going to go to utilities in the left sidebar, and I'm going to tap the expand triangle there. Under utilities, there's quite a few items that are, could be really interesting, or they could be totally of no interest to you. The first item is the hidden items. So you have a feature that if you want to have some of your photos, selected photos, you can actually hide them, and they go into a hidden area in your Photos app, which means they don't normally appear here, and you have to do an authentication to see them. So before doing this demo for you today, I took a few pictures out of the bottom here that I wasn't particularly interested in having you see. So I hid them. I put them in a hidden album. I mean, I hid them, which put them in this album. If I tap the word hidden under utilities, it tells me that I have to use Face ID to view this album. It would either say Face ID or Touch ID or passcode, depending, I guess, on what device you had. So if I want to view what's in this hidden folder, I have to use in my case, a biometric feature to unlock it. I'm not gonna do that. If I want to see recently deleted photos, the same thing. Both hidden and recently deleted are behind a face or a Touch ID area. If I want to see duplicate photos, this shows me photos out of my entire group of 13,000 whatever that the Photos app thinks might be duplicates, and it gives me an opportunity to save one and delete one, keep both, merge them together, that kind of thing. If I tap receipts, it looks through my photos and finds things that it thinks are receipts and only displays those for me. If I choose handwriting, it looks through the photos and tries to find photos in which it can recognize handwriting of some sort. Could be on a sign, could be on a flip chart, could be on a whiteboard. There's a recipe for broccoli rice casserole, handwritten. So that's interesting. You haven't done anything. It's just Apple has found this, the Photos app has just found all this stuff and is surfacing it for you. If I tap illustrations, then I'm presented with things where there appears to be an illustration of one sort or another in the photos. I can search for QR codes. This would be photos that contain QR codes. Here's a fascinating one to show you how this particular thing works. That thing you're looking at right there, that's on the wall in a Popeye's chicken restaurant and that is a QR code. So the Photos app recognized that for what it was. If I go back to the left sidebar, I can find recently saved photos, recently viewed photos, photos I've recently edited, photos I recently shared with other people. You can look for documents. It looks through for documents it might find. Whatever it happens to be, any kind of document or map, or well, I can see there's a couple of UPS labels in there and that kind of stuff. I can tap imports and I can see files that I've imported and when I imported them. I can tap map, and this shows me a map and shows me where my photos have been taken and where I can just tap each area and zoom in and find photos from various locations on the map. So those are the hidden items. I'm sorry, those are the utility items. Now, someone had a question about that. Was Joe, is that you? Those are the utilities.
It was not, but let me ask you one anyway. If you have
okay.
a QR code photo, can you execute it from the photo?
I don't know. Probably.
Okay.
I don't know.
And recently, well, that's not important. What about recently saved? How's that different than I just took the photo?
I don't know.
Okay, thanks.
Oh, actually, yeah, no, actually it is. I think it's I don't know. I'd have to look that up. There is a difference, I think. There is a difference, and it might have to do with the action I've taken or how I've gotten the photo in here. I don't know. I'd have to look that up.
Or maybe if you edited it in some way.
Well, recently edited is another one, two items down here.
Oh,
So
you're
this
right.
is so edited is a separate thing. There is a difference between I think there is a difference. Somebody might know and they could chime in and answer that question. I don't know off the top of my head. I think there is a difference because this is not if that's what this was, photos that I've taken, then that would be the same as on the left sidebar going back to photos. It'd be this bottom few rows here. Because those bottom 3 or 4 rows that are shown at the top of the screen, those are the last photos I've taken. So it's different. That's a little research project there. So any questions about utilities? The next item is media types. Oh, no, I already did that. Sorry. The next item is albums. So these are albums. Tim was referring to this earlier. These are just albums that you can create. You can just put your photos in if you choose to. Albums are totally optional. If you choose to, you can establish an album and you can move, or not move, you can associate photos with that particular album. And then if you want to see photos that are in that particular album, you can open up the album and you can organize your photos that way. I actually use albums in an unnecessary way because I've always created albums, photos by year and event within the year. So I have like in 2010, there'd be a Florida trip, a Birmingham trip, of this kind of thing. There was snow, there was something else, there was all this. So my photos I've always organized by year and within year by event. So I just continued that tradition here in creating my albums that I have in photos. I really, I just do it because I've always done it. Other people might have different kind of albums that they would create for different reasons, where they would bring um, some subject matter together across all their photos. They would try to bring all of the uh, photos for a particular subject together in an album. There's no right or wrong way to do this. It's just that you can create whatever albums you want and associate the photos with those albums. One thing, so you guys are probably already familiar with that because that's not really new. One thing that might be worth mentioning briefly here is we talked earlier about shared, the family, or not family, but the shared library as being distinct from albums, and they are distinct. One of the differences, other than the fact that they're two separate things, one of the differences is if you create an album and you associate photos with that album, those photos remain in your main library. They're just linked to the album. Whereas it's different with a shared library where the photos are essentially moved to the shared library. So that's one of the differences between them. And then as a result, because the photos here are linked to albums, that means that a single photo could appear and be linked to more than one album. And there's not multiple copies of it. It's just linked to that same photo is just linked to multiple albums. So I close that back up. Shared albums, I wasn't going to talk about that much because they've been around. Those are just albums that you've created that you've chosen to share with other people. And again, this is not the shared library. This is a shared album. Okay, now I was going to switch gears here a little bit and show you a couple of slightly more advanced features. But before I do that, I wanted to stop and see if there's any questions. I'm sneaking into AI a little bit here. Okay, at the top of the screen, toward the top right of the screen, you can see that there's a search icon. So if I tap search, I'm going to get a search bar. I'm going to tap the word waterfall. And it searched my photos. This is out of the 13,000, and it shows me pictures that have waterfall in it, or what it thinks is a waterfall. And in fact, you can even tell by the thumbnails that there's a lot of falling water in those. Now, if I type waterfall space with Anne, with my wife, it shows me, well, it wants to know what Anne, and I'll choose Anne Zeck. If you look down below, it says there's one result. So if I tap that picture, there's a picture of my wife and a waterfall, and it pulled that out of the 13,000 photos based on that search. That makes sense? I don't think it's going to be perfect, but it's pretty interesting.
This is what I was asking about last week or last month or whatever it is. I'm very excited by this because I don't tag photos, and this is cool.
I don't tag them either. I organize them by album and all of that, but this provides a whole other way to to get at these kind of things. So I mean, I wonder how many waterfalls I'm with. I never did this. I'll tap that. I rehearsed the other one. I didn't rehearse this one. So there I am, the same waterfall. Imagine that. There I am again. So that's how that works. Pretty interesting. Pretty interesting. So that's how you can do some searching through your photos, and you can combine things and play around with it and see what you're trying to come up with and see what you can find. When you're done, there's a done button. Oops. There's a done button at the top right, so I can hit done. Now I'm back on the main screen. Okay. Now I don't know how much I can't keep track of what's available in 18.1, what's available, what needs particular kind of equipment or devices or chips or anything. somebody here, Aaron might know, somebody else might know. I think that search feature is pretty much available across the board. I don't think you need anything special for that. But you guys can try it, and if you don't have, you can try it on an older device and see if it works. I'm not sure how much. I think it gets confusing in my mind, the blurring of what's what's AI, what's not, what requires an M chip, what requires that kind of stuff. It's getting a little bit confusing to keep track of all of that in my mind. Now, this next thing I was going to show you is, in fact, something that needs to be, this is Apple Intelligence. So you do need to have 18.1 and need to have the right kind of device to be able to do this. So I'm going to choose a photo here. I'm going to choose this photo. And I'm just pull it up as a demo for you. So I'm going to pinch it and make it a little bigger there. Then I'm going to tap the photo, and that's going to bring up the controls at the bottom where I can delete it, I can share it, I can favorite it. And the three sliders are, this is how I edit it. In the old interface, it used to say, you used to see something that said edit. Here, those three sliders in the near the center at the bottom of the screen, that means edit. So I'm going to tap that. Now I'm in edit mode for this photograph. Now, depending on the device you have and all of that, you will see items on the left side of your screen on the iPad. The interface on the phone is different, but it's the same kind of controls. You can adjust it. You can crop, you can filter, and there's an item that says cleanup. That cleanup feature requires Apple Intelligence. So it would require 18.1 or later, and it would require a device that's Apple Intelligent compatible, and my iPad is. So here's a quick demo of cleanup. If I tap cleanup on the left side of the screen, what I'm going to do, whoops, sorry. What you do is you tap the item you'd like to clean up or get rid of. So I'm going to tap this, this bench here. I'm going to swipe over that with my finger. Now, you notice what happened? The bench went away. But did you see what happened? It left the shadow, right? Can you see that?
I just wanted to let you know that I think the pool needs.
Okay. So that wouldn't be totally acceptable. So I'm going to cancel that. Now I'm going to clean up. I'm going to tap it again. I'm going to edit it. I'm going to clean it up. So now I'm going to draw a line around that bench, but I'm going to include the shadow. So I'm going to start here with my finger. I'm going to come out here. I'm going to pick up the shadow. I'm going to go up to the bench, and I'm going to go like that. The bench went away and the shadow went away, and it replaced it with grass. That's an easy one to do. There are a lot of places where it gets tripped up and it's very difficult to do, and this will continue to improve over time. But that was an easy one to do and to show you there. So now if I go up here, elsewhere on the screen, you see up there at the top of the picture, there's like there's a traffic cone there. I'm going to tap that traffic cone, and it went away. There are three people back there, and I don't know if you can tell, they're being highlighted by the AI. And it's saying you might want to get rid of these. So if I tap that person on the left and the bottom there, they went away, and the person back there, that's my wife, she went away. So I now have gotten rid of the bench, the traffic cone, and those three people from the picture. That's the cleanup. That's how the cleanup feature works on this. Or just one example of how it can work. The other thing that I saw earlier, and I wasn't sure how this was going to work. I decided, let's see if I could clean this up. See this little in the center of the screen, there's a piece of grass that's gone there. It's like a little muddy patch. I said, what happens if I clean that up? There you go. It's all done. So that's a sample, an example of how the cleanup function can work. If you save the, if I were to save this, then it would save this, but it's non-destructive. I could always go back and revert back to the original. So I'm not losing the original if I were to save this after having tried to clean it up. Any questions about that?
If you want to save it, do you rename it?
No, reason to. No, there's no reason to rename it because it's non-destructive. Okay, I'll go ahead and save it. I'm going to tap done. So now I'm back. I'm going to tap the X in the upper right-hand corner. Now I'm back in my photo library, and there's the picture. It's saved. So there's no reason to rename it. All I have to do if I want to edit it is tap it. Oops, tap it, and then.
But the original is also in your library then.
No,
Correct.
it's the same. No, it's one image with the changes, the original photo and the changes embedded together.
Well, I guess that's what I was trying to ask is, could you separate them some way?
Well, yeah, you save it. Yeah, save one, make a copy, and then make your changes on the copy.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, make it do.
But you asked the question, do you have to copy it or save it, and you don't. So here, if I go to edit, I can go to revert. You see in the upper right-hand corner, it says revert. You see that red button?
Yeah.
I'm going to hit revert. Revert to original. Boom. The bench is back, the cone's back, the people are back. So if I go back to the library here, that's the original. I didn't save a copy. I just saved the item, and the original was preserved with all the changes sort of embedded in there. So I can choose to revert back to the original non-destructively whenever I want to. But if you wanted, so I don't know that there's any, I mean, I guess I'm sure you could have a reason why you'd want to make a copy and work on the copy, but when you can, all you have to do is duplicate the photo and work on the copy. But you don't have to. Okay, I'm about done here. Oh, one of the things I heard somebody make comments about is, oh, selecting items got harder or something like that. Well, maybe it did. I don't really remember the old interface. Final thing to show you here is how to select. In the upper right hand of the screen, there's a select button. If I tap that, then I can just tap on individual photos to select them. And every time I do a tap, so now I have 5 photos selected. So I can choose to share them or delete them or whatever I want to do with them. Actually, yeah. So that's one way to select some photos. Just tap them individually, and I can tap them anywhere. They do not have to be contiguous. So I'm going to cancel that. Then I'm going to hit select again. Now I'm going to tap and drag and get a group of photos. So I'm going to start up here on the 3rd row from the bottom, and I'm going to put my finger down, and I'm going to, and I'm going to drag without lifting it. And now I've selected 35 photos just by dragging from one place to the other, and they're all contiguous, and I have all 35 selected. So that's another way to select a photo or a group of photos. And that's pretty much the way it's always been. That hasn't changed. It's just that I think sometimes people got thrown here with the new presentation on this particular screen. So the next thing final thing I'll show you is that if you select a photo, one or more photos, I'll just select 3. Then if you tap the 3 dots in the lower right-hand corner, you can act on whatever photos you selected. You can copy them. You can favorite them all. You can duplicate them all, Joe, if you wanted to. You could hide them, which is what I did before this presentation with the photos I didn't want you to see. You can show them in all photos. You can play them as a slideshow. You can add them to an album you've created. You can move them to the shared library. And notice it says move. And I could adjust the date and time or location for the items I've selected. So those are the various actions you can take against either an individual photo or photos that you have you've selected.
Does that mean if I took a photo in 2018, I could readjust it and say I took it in 2022?
I haven't really. Well, the short answer is yes.
The court's
I
not
don't
going to
know.
like that at all.
I don't know. Well, there have been there are programs around that have allowed you to change the metadata on photos and images for a long time. I don't know enough about that to comment specifically. There are different pieces of metadata that are maintained about created, modified, originally taken, and all that stuff. So yeah, you can change that for the purpose of where they appear and how they sort here. I don't know how thorough that is or how it relates to other programs that you might use to try to do things for more nefarious purposes on
Well,
your
it's
images
cool to
and
have a
everything.
time machine.
Well, there you go. You can yeah. Well, actually, I think one of the non nefarious use of this is that you've imported a bunch of photos that came from your DSLR and there was no GPS tagging that went on with those photos that you took at the Grand Canyon. So you can select all those photos and you could make the location be the Grand Canyon. And you could sort of retroactively tag it with a location or a date because that information was not captured and available when you imported the DSLR photos. I mean, that would be like a sort of classic use of this, I think.
So Jim has 10 boxes of slides that when he gets copied, he can change all those.
He can, if he keeps track of them and knows when they were, he could change them all. Absolutely. That's what your project is when the snow forecast is for 2 feet out of snow outside. That's what you do. Okay. As always, things take longer than I anticipated, but that was it. That's what people were sort of talking about. Those are the changes. It's not really scary. You can make this as simple as you want. You can get rid of these sections. You can not be overwhelmed by it, and you can customize it, not to your heart's content, but you can customize it substantially.
Quite extensively.
Yes.
Thank you. That was really interesting.
Yeah, and Jim, you were asking about screenshots. There's an option there to select the media type or whatever for screenshots and just display those.
Yep.
Where is that? I didn't see that.
Well, it's on the left, Jim.
Yeah.
Under media types, at the bottom is screenshots.
Yeah,
If I tap that, it
Yeah.
shows me only the screenshots.
So you can easily find them that way.
And again, all of these things essentially are available on the other devices. It's just that you have to look a little bit because the user interface is different. Especially when you move to the Mac, where it has sort of a different Mac oriented ways to get to all these kind of features.
On a related note, I posted in the chat, but on November 12th is going to be the photo sync. So I'm sure George will be talking more about the new things and or certainly be addressing any questions anybody has about the new options in photos. So go to the photo sig. I'm trying to scroll back to find out the exact time again. It's going to be from 11 a.m. on Tuesday, November 12th. Awkward time for some people if they're not home, but go to the Zoom meeting and you can find out more and have more questions about photos once you suggest you play around with it for a while. Van?
It's not as scary. It's not as scary as it appears. And when you realize you have access to all these controls, you realize that that you're in control.
Yeah. Van did a great job. Thank you very much.
Yes.
And Apple was just showing us, I mean, yeah, it was kind of a shock to see it. And it's too bad they hid down at the bottom the option to do some arrangements. And as Van has pointed out, you can disable most of it, but I think Apple just wanted to highlight all the things that were actually, most of them were there before. They just weren't readily observable. And now they made them very obvious so that you could know that you had them available and get rid of them if you didn't like them.
But one of the things, as I said, I mentioned it a couple of times that the featured photos and stuff like that, you feel like, well, gee, do I really want them to do this? But I have found that it's not overwhelming. I know what it is. I know that Apple and Photos app are trying to surface these things, and I have found on more than a few occasions it interesting just to look. Think, wow, that as I said, literally, oh, those were photos the day I retired, and okay, so suddenly, I'm not going to go into my photos and just
Right.
do that. But if one pops up as a memory or as a featured photo or something, I think that's a pleasant experience. So
On the Apple TV, that's an option. You can actually put your photos thing there and suddenly have them displayed as your screensaver. But
right.
the one thing I've got to point out, just like Van pointed out, sometimes the featured things that they come up with are rather interesting. Like sometimes it'll just feature fall leaves or winter snow. And you kind of forget it. Goes out there, gathers a whole bunch of your photos, and you say, "Oh yeah, I remember those. Gee, those were nice."
Yeah. And so, I mean, you get that. That's just stuff you get if you leave a couple of those sections turned on. And now that you know that you can ignore the sections if you want to,
Yeah.
there's really no harm.